Ons gas vanoggend Rob Hersov, baie uitgesproke oor politieke sake, maar vandag gaan ons dalk ook 'n ander sy van hom leer ken. Rob, baie welkom. Baie dankie dat jy vanoggend by ons kom kuier het.
Baie dankie. Kan ons nou oorskakel na Engels asseblief?
100%, ek gaan my bes doen.
Ja, baie dankie.
So impressive business CV, lots of interesting things that you've done. The most interesting of which has been Fantastic Mr. Fox. So I have to ask you about that. En net vir ons kykers wat nie weet nie, Fantastic Mr. Fox is 'n animasiefliek wat gebaseer is op Roald Dahl se boek en Rob was deel daarvan. Vertel vir ons hoe dit gebeur
I
het.
was living in London at the time, and it was probably, I don't know, 12, 14 years ago. And a friend of mine said to me, "You like movies, Rob. Would you like to meet Wes Anderson?" I said, "I'd love to meet Wes Anderson." So he gave me his number, called him, and he said, "Rob, I'm outside of London an hour. Come and see me tomorrow." Went out to see him. We were chatting, and I said, "What are you working on now?" He said, "I'm making Fantastic Mr. Fox." And then he said to me, "Have you ever done a voiceover?" I said, "Yeah, I have actually." He said, "Okay, why don't you read as the helicopter pilot? Go in there and read these lines." So I went in, read the lines, came out, and he said, "That was great, but I've got too many English accents." And I said, "Well, I can do a French accent, Scottish, Irish." He said, "You choose the accent, go do it." So I went into the recording booth, came out, he said, "Perfect."
Which accent was it that you chose?
Engels and Afrikaans.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
But what is it about that movie that excited you so much? Tell us a bit about the story, because Roald Dahl, there's always a lesson behind everything that he writes.
So Roald Dahl is extraordinary. I mean, his short stories turned into movies they're evergreen, they last forever. And Fantastic Mr. Fox is about good and evil. There's an environmental angle to it, but it's fundamentally about good and evil.
Yeah.
And it's very funny.
Yeah, which also gave you a lead-in into a lot of stuff that you address now, you know, in your political, your activist life now. But I want to talk more about this artistic side of you, because you are also a poet, and people didn't know it, and then also a cartoonist. So tell us about this artistic side.
So I've written a number of poems. Most are political or about political people. And I would not say I'm the next South African poet laureate. So don't expect too much. But BizNews has published them, and I've had a lot of fun. Yeah. But not a lot of people have called me to say, "Please publish a book."
Can we read your poetry?
Yeah. And what happened on the cartooning side is there's a great cartoonist, the best in South Africa, Dave Dubell. I love his cartoon style. And I called him up, met him, we became friends. And I now send him ideas of tunes. He does the tune. And he very kindly signs them Dave D. Rob H.
Yeah.
So I've had about 12 cartoons published, but he's the cartoonist.
But this political commentary expressed through art, is that something that you would like to further pursue? What about it is so different? Because you can just say what you want to say, but now you say it through a poem or you say it through a cartoon.
It makes me happy. I find it amusing and funny. I'm not sure how many other people care. I do think cartoons have an impact because it's a visual story and it's hard-hitting and there's usually one punchline. So I think cartoons have a real role to play. I doubt my poetry is going to make any impact. But there is one more thing I haven't tried.
Yeah.
I want to do stand-up comedy. My wife's begging me not to.
Well, today is your chance. You'll be speaking to Davy later.
Yeah.
So
He's funnier than I am.
Golden opportunity for you.
Yeah.
We'll chat a little bit more later about the role that you feel that you have to play here in South Africa. Ek kuier verder met ons gas, Rob Hersov. Rob, you're going to eat well today. I hope you saw that. Empty stomach.
Count on me.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You've worked all over the world and with some leaders in business, some controversial figures like Rupert Murdoch. Please tell us about that experience.
He is the most extraordinary businessman walking this earth. And he's still operational in his late 80s. And I worked as Rupert's right-hand man in New York for 2.5 years. And it was the greatest business experience anyone could dream of. Yeah. He's got an instinct for business. He can look at an opportunity, ask 5 questions, and know exactly whether he should do it or not, what price to pay, and how it would fit into his empire. Yeah. I've never seen anything like it.
If you look at the corporate culture in America and coming back to South Africa, do you see some differences? Are there things that you think that we can learn or that we can do like the US?
I think the Americans can learn from us. Yeah. I think it's the other way around. I think we are better team players than the Americans are. They tend to be more individualistic, and our market's way tougher than theirs. It's tiny, and it's complicated, and it's political, and it's difficult. But we manage to build businesses in this environment, and I think Americans can learn from us.
Ons is planmakers, nee? We make a plan.
Boer maak 'n plan.
Maak a plan. So the decision to come back to South Africa, was that a discussion around the family table? How did that work?
So I'd lived overseas for 31 years. I left after doing military service, 1985, and in 2016, the beginning of the year, I said to my wife, my 2 older boys are at university, our 2 younger kids we can move, and I want to go home. I miss South Africa. My parents are healthy.
Still here.
My dad's 99 this year, and I want to go back. But I only planned to come back for 2 years, and because I said to my wife, under Zuma, this country's finished. Anyway, we're not leaving.
I decided to stay. The decision to come back, did that also have something to do with the fact that your grandfather, Oupa, was part of the founding of Anglo-Val?
Exactly.
Was that part of the pool?
Yeah. You know, the older generation still remember the Anglo-Val, Hersov name. And, you know, we have houses here, and I miss Bunny Cha and Braaivleis, and, you know, this is the best country in the world.
I think people might expect that because you criticize government a lot, that there's nothing positive that you have to say. 5 positive things about South Africa, quickly.
The people, the humor, the opportunity, the dynamism of people, and it is the most beautiful country in the world. I mean, I can mention 20 places in South Africa that are more beautiful, more wondrous than anywhere else I've been to in the world.
Yeah, fantastic. It's so great to have you here. And Davy, I know, is as excited as a kid at Christmas about the prospect of speaking to you today. Thank you so much, Rob.
My beurt om wat erop te gesels, and I'm telling you, I've been looking forward to this discussion for the last couple of weeks.
I hope you're not nervous.
I'm nervous. You can't like hell. Okay, let's start with perhaps a bit of a background to where you grew up with. I know you and Shalene spoke about this, but you are basically a trust baby. Yeah, I mean, you grew up in a family that's extremely wealthy, and you grew up in business. And now you're quite critical on, say, for example, government. Do you think you've got the right to do that with your background?
I think I have an obligation to do it. My father said to me when I got into this activism, capitalist or free markets activism, everyone was shouting and screaming at me, what are you doing, and calling me names. And my father called me and he said, I've never been more proud of you for doing and saying what other people can't afford to do and say. So I think it's an obligation for me to do this and to keep going.
Now, we're going to talk a little bit about politics a little bit later, but just give me a bit of a background. I've read about you. You went to Harvard, for example. You worked for Murdoch, for instance. You've met some really seriously powerful people. You were the CEO of big companies, actually. Give me a bit of a background on that. And your background at home, in a business family, did that sort of help? Was that background a good
Massively.
Background?
So, you know, incredible people would come to my house to see my father, obviously to the office, but they'd also come to the house for dinner, and he'd have events, and he'd include us. So whenever my parents had a dinner party or cocktail event at the house, we'd come down as children in our pajamas, we'd walk around, introduce ourselves to everyone. And I grew up in that environment. And, you know, even at 11 years old, my father took me to the final gold pour of Rand Leese's mine. There's a photograph of me in my shorts, my blazer, Ridge School blazer, helping on the final gold pour. And I watched him speak. You know, I learned public speaking from him. He's an incredible public speaker and storyteller.
And you've met some serious international, people that we only read about. I mean, I've just spoken to you and you said you've met Elon Musk, for example. You've met Klaus Schwab from World Economic Forum. Are they all part of this big international, let's call it the mafia, the world, the money power out there?
No, they're not.
The Illuminati, what all these names?
It's nonsense. The Rothschilds don't run the world. WEF doesn't dictate the narrative. This is all nonsense. It's a conference of the most powerful people that go there and discuss the world. Klaus Schwab is a particularly unimpressive human being in my view, and could never run the world Illuminati, even if he tried. And it doesn't exist.
You went to Harvard. Is it important to go to a very influential university like Harvard? And why is that where you meet all these business contacts for later life?
Not really. I met some extraordinary people, but I didn't know then what was going to turn out in their lives. My age, I'm 64 this year, turning 65, and a number of these people are now running big businesses around the world. Bob Bradway at Amgen Pharmaceutical, Greg Case, worldwide CEO of Aon. But when I knew them then, who would have guessed? You go there to open your mind.
Your wife, she's a medical doctor.
She's a New Zealander, Kiwi, all black.
Yeah, but she is also an entrepreneur. Did you teach her how to become an entrepreneur?
No, but I encouraged her to do so. When I stole her from New Zealand, we were living in England, and I said, what are you going to do? You're going to be a doctor in London? She said, I don't want to join the NHS. She told me an idea she had. I said, this is a good idea. Turn it into a business. And I backed her. And for the last 12 years, she's been building this business, Jumo Health. Sold it last year for a lot of money. So she is the real unicorn in the family.
Ek gesels verder met Rob. Okay, let's talk politics. And this is a fun side. But let's start international politics. I think you're a bit of a Trump supporter. What do you think of these tariffs of his? He's really upsetting stuff.
He's upsetting stuff, but he's resetting the world market. America's debt's out of control. Yeah. He has to tackle that. America's been ripped off. I agree with him. It's been ripped off around the world. Countries have tariffs against America and then expect to be able to sell their goods into America tariff-free. It's wrong.
But the way he calculated those tariffs are just wrong as well.
I think what he did was he actually fired a shot into the air to scare everyone, to tell them he was serious, which he is. And then he said, right, you've got 90 days to come forward and negotiate. And I believe 70 countries have, including Zimbabwe.
Yeah, I heard that.
But not South Africa.
Yes, I heard that. But I mean, is this the way to do things? I mean, is this the way to scare everybody? Is this just a negotiation tactic of his?
Yes, but it'll work.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, the financial markets are all over the place. By the way, what do you think is going to happen to the US dollar? He wants the US dollar weaker, for instance. Is he going to be successful in that? And do you think he is actually going to reset the world?
I think the dollar is going to weaken, but I think there is a de-dollarization momentum in the world anyway. I think over a period of time, the dollar will cease to be the reserve currency of the world. But I do think Trump's going to be successful.
And what's going to replace the dollar then?
In my view, as a store of value, gold and Bitcoin.
You think that's the two new reserve currencies of the world?
Yes.
Do you personally invest in Bitcoin?
I invest in gold and Bitcoin.
Both of those?
Both of those.
And do you think, by the way, Donald Trump is also quite keen on these so-called cryptocurrencies. Will there be some changes in the United States as well? Because if the US dollar, it's actually give the Americans this amazing privilege, because it is the world's most important reserve currency at the moment.
No question about it. The only investment I've ever seen that is completely uncorrelated to the world monetary system is Bitcoin.
Okay, well, ek moet net vir almal sê nou, dis nie beleggingsadvies hierdie nie. Dis Rob wat reken dat Bitcoin, the next big thing is going to be. Can you give me a number? Where do you think Bitcoin is going to end this year?
So Bitcoin's at around 90,000, 92,000 US dollars per Bitcoin at the moment.
Yeah.
21 million will only ever be made. It's at 19 million today. Bitcoin in existence. I think I've got a price prediction of $150,000 this year, minimum. Could go further.
The business in South Africa, and I guess internationally, business do not usually get involved in politics, especially in South Africa. I mean, you're a bit of the odd one out, but it seems to me as if business is finding its voice again in South Africa. Is that your perception as well?
So the excuse that business and politics don't mix is an excuse made by business people for not getting involved in politics. In this country, it's intertwined, and it's inexcusable that the business community doesn't have a voice.
But they're getting more vocal.
Slowly, but it's rare people. It's not enough.
In your view, what's wrong with South Africa? What's wrong with our politics? What do you think of the government of national unity?
So, for the last 10 years, Zuma and Ramaphosa have deindustrialized and destroyed our economy. They are a socialist, racist organization, kleptocratic, ineptocratic. You've heard me say this before.
Yeah.
But the GNU is going sideways. The main priority of the GNU is to keep MK and EFF out. But the most important priorities, in my view, are economic growth, safety and security. And I don't hear anyone at the GNU mentioning those things.
So is the obstacle only politics then?
Currently, yeah.
Yeah. So what would you do if you're in a position? What are those specific things you will do to fix the economy?
The economy is so easy to fix. This country should be growing at 3, 4, 5% a year. It's growing at 1%. our population growth exceeds our economic growth, which means we're getting poorer every year. This country is so easy to fix. Deregulate, privatize state-owned enterprises, cut costs, bring in a Doge. We're spending way too much money on the 1.5 million public servants who are earning way too much money. Cut that to half.
Ons breek vinnig weg met ons vlugborg, Saf Air, en daarna gesels ek en Rob verder.
Ontbytsake word met trots gevlieg deur FlySafair. Besoek flysafair.co.za en gebruik hulle laagkoste soekfunksie vir die mees bekostigbare vlugte na al die groot stede in Suid-Afrika en verder. FlySafair, vir die liefde van vlieg.
Yeah, no, this is no, you're on a roll here. Let's go for it. What's wrong with it? So you think the biggest challenge in South Africa is politics. What's the political outlook for you? What's going to happen next?
So I'm at 4 out of 10 for South Africa. 5 out of 10 means things could go badly, could go well. 4 out of 10 means I'm slightly pessimistic. And I'm slightly pessimistic because it doesn't look like there's anyone in the ANC who's going to put their hand up like the Swedes did in 1992 and say it's not working, we need to change direction. No one has the courage, or no one has the ability or the intellect to do it.
But recently what happened is that we saw what happened with the past week with the VAT on and off. Yeah. Isn't that a turning point?
That is a turning point. It's, on the one hand, it's democracy in motion. Things are working. Democracy is working. On the other hand, the DA has found a voice and have stood up against the ANC, and it's a good thing. And the irritating thing is all those rats and mice little parties that then ran barking when the ANC told them to come and supported them. But the DA has won.
The news coverage of what's happening in South Africa, what do you think of that? Let's start with international news coverage about South Africa, because that changed recently, especially with Trump. But what do you think also of South African news outlets, broadly speaking?
So the international news is now being heavily impacted by the fact that Donald Trump and his administration are focused on South Africa. They've got way more important things to do. Solve the Middle East, solve Russia, but he cares about South Africa. And
Why?
That's a good thing. Thanks to extraordinary people like Gary Player, Rian Barnard, David Sachs, there are a lot of South Africans that have the ear to Donald Trump and are keeping him focused a bit on South Africa.
Are we going to see more sanctions against South Africa from Donald Trump?
Hopefully.
Hopefully. That's not a good thing for the economy.
But not against the country. They need to put sanctions against the evil people, all of whom are mentioned in the Zondo Commission.
Yeah,
Just go through the Zondo Commission, sanction those people.
Okay, come back to the news coverage in South Africa. What do you think of the media houses, the big ones?
Do you want me to tell you the truth?
Go for it.
So IOL is a disaster, okay? You know who owns IOL. News 24, in my view, is a bootlicker of the ANC.
Well, looking at some comments from Peter, for example, that's not the case.
Yeah, but Peter himself is actually a good guy. But Adrian Basson's a disaster. Get rid of him. And then Daily Maverick has done a very good job calling out the government, but they're fundamentally leftist and anti-business. Where is the centre-right, free markets?
But you've got an answer. You've got an answer for that. Tell us about that.
It's partially an answer.
Okay.
A group of friends and I got together and we founded the Truth Report a month and a half ago. Fully funded, launches in the next 3 weeks. And it's pulling together all the pro-free market, free enterprise, rule of law, democracy podcasters.
So this is a right-wing...
Not right-wing. It's centre-right.
Centre-right, okay. And then it's called a...
Truth Report.
So how will people know about this? Are you going to be in opposition to the other media houses then?
No, I think we're going to complement, supplement, but we're going to keep them honest. Because we're focused on family, faith, flag, facts and freedom. Those 5 Fs.
All right.
And facts and freedom, most important.
Will the people of South Africa be able to turn this around? Can we turn it around? And are we going to turn it around?
Yes,
this economy to
but it's going to take too long. The economy will collapse in the meantime. We need a crisis. And that crisis is going to come from America. We need it. We need America to not put up with the nonsense anymore of the ANC and to come and tell them how the world is and how they need to behave. They need to repeal EWC, pull their case of the ICJ against Israel and get rid of BEE just to have a conversation with America. And America brings huge value and pain.
You know what I think what is certainly important in South Africa, and that we must have various views. And what you're doing is a good thing. And I think what's been happening in South Africa recently is a good thing. This disaster with the budget, in a way, is a good thing.
Correct.
Because it's putting things out in the open. But I really appreciate for you coming up from Cape Town to visit us here by Ontbytsake. Dit is regtig lekker geweest om jou te gesels. I'm looking forward to see what the Truth Report is going to cover. And believe me, if I think you're wrong, I will criticize you as well. Thank you very much for coming.
Baie dankie daar.
Dankie.